Unit 16, Jonathan Swift, The Battle of the Books. The Battle of the Books is a mock epic written in prose. It is it differs from a tale of a tub is being very much of an occasional satire. The Battle of the Book is Swift's reaction to attack on his patron, Sir William Temple. His objective is to make Temple's opponent look ridiculous. He succeeded marvelously in his attempt. It is interesting to note that Swift's aim is not so much to uphold the cause of the ancient as to defend his patron from what he thought was an unmannerly attack by Wanton and Bentley. Let me explain the critical analysis of the text, the Battle of the Books. So it is a short satire depicting a literal battle, a literal fight between the ancient and the modern in the King's Library. Sir William Temple, he is the patron of Jonathan Swift, had written an essay upon the ancient and the modern learning, which was published in the year 1690. The quarrel of the ancient and the modern was a controversy which had been going on in one form or another throughout the 17th century. And this text is in the form of a conversation, a dialogue between Crites and Eugenes in Dryden's dramatic essay on poesy. And in this essay, Temple attempts to demolish the claim of superiority of modern art and civilization. Such superiority was upheld by so-called moderns as a matter of the historical fact. Temple, who preferred classical to modern literature, opposed the suggestion. He was an ancient in the sense that he is an advocate of ancient greatness and excellence. So he represented the ancient people. The wanton reflect may be described as modern manifesto. The sharpest blow to Temple was delivered by Richard Bentley, who was at the time the keeper of the Royal Library at St. James Palace. So he is the one who is going to represent the modern. Now it is going to be a discussion with these three people, Temple, Wanton, and Bentley in the fray. So Temple cited Aesop fables and the epistle of Palaris in a bid to establish the superiority of ancient prose literature. Immediately, Bentley cut the ground from under Temple's feet by demonstrating the fables and the epistles were both suppositious. Swift resented the unmannerly behavior of Wanton and Bentley. Yeah, of course, they took no great interest in the actual details of the dispute between the Temple and his opponents. However, he made no secret of his contempt for the modern. He just opposed, but he didn't give any explanation for his accusation. The bookseller's note to the reader tells us how the books in the St. James Library come to be a decisive battle, believing that they are parties to the dispute. The author's preface defines satire as a mirror in which we have seen everybody's face else except our own actually. So now the battle spreads from Parnassus to St. James Library. It purports to be the full and true account, but what I'm sorry, but what we see Swift is not as subjective as he claims to be, ancient or modern. Now the scene is actually shifted from Parnassus Mountain to St. James Library. So initially what has happened in Parnassus Mountain, there are two mountains. The tall was occupied by the ancient people and the small was occupied by the modern people, where they started their battle by actually arguing their works actually. Of course, it is a quarrel said to have started over the right to spot of the ground on the top of the hill of Parnassus. What I have said, one mountain is occupied by the ancient and other one is by the modern. Where comes the fable of the spider and the bee? Here, the ancient is compared as the spider and moderns as bee actually. The spider, it lives in the fragile, dusty cobweb. Sorry, cobweb. It seems to him a great, strong fortress. And they are the one actually who just borrows and carries the work from their own actually. That is how they build the web. This is how they create a web actually. And the bee, elegant and beautiful phrases talk. They claim that ancient, they borrow from the ancient, that means from their people, but whereas the bee takes from different action. So the spider web is expanded from the same, whereas bee takes on one other hand, and from other hand, it collects the material from outside and from the same. Only by that it actually produces attractive honey, and so both are actually good, honey and wax. It refers sweetness as well as sunlight. Now the spider's outburst and the bee composure. This is one of a beautiful comparison and a beautiful argument. Now the spider heaps abuse on the bee when he says, "A plague split you. Is it you, with a vengeance, that have made this litter here? Do you think I have nothing else to do but to mend and repair after your hours?" A little later, the spider describes the bee as the vagabond without house or home, without stock or inheritance. This is how actually spider outburst to the bee actually. And now there was a parallel between the spider and the bee. It was by Aesop. The quarrel has started already and it is going to be very severe. Now the Aesop watches the quarrel between the spider and the bee, that is the ancient and the modern. He observes that the spider boast is empty, that whatever the method and skill involved in the spider effidies, if the material be nothing but dirt spun out of the own entrails, the effidies will conclude at last in the cold. Whereas on the other side, actually, the Jupiter consulted the god of the council. As the two parties, ancient and the modern, they want to prove they are the superior. So they decided to consult Jupiter, who is the council of the gods. So the council is divided in its opinion, whereon about Jupiter decides to consult the book of fate. He keeps the dick secret, but summons a few of the lesser gods. I'm really sorry, called by mortal men, ancient or events. Momus, the patron of the moderns. He is a patron of the modern who says that when the ancient, the modern, both were dressing the mother in a scrap of paper, herself had. On the other hand, actually, both are noise, impudence, dulls, vanity, positiveness, pedantry, and all the madness. And all of them, the children of criticism, are seen around playing. This is what the comment which is made by Momus, the patron of the moderns. And also, he severely commented the ancient people. And now he plead to criticism. He makes a frequent request to the goddess to hasten to Britain to save her devout worshippers. The moderns, from utter collapse and ruin. Criticism immediately proceeds to her beloved island of Britain and arrives at St. James' Library, sees her own son wanton, to whom he fates have assigned a very short thread. She also instructs two of her beloved children, it refers both ancient and the modern, dull and ill manners, closely to attend his presence in all encounters. She then vanishes in a mist. Importance episode Dryden and Virgil. Homer, mounted on a furious horse, rides among the enemy ranks, killing all who come his way. First, Gondy Breton, Denham, Wesley, Perrault, and Fontainebleau. Virgil appears on the other side. Finally, Dryden proposes an exchange of armor to which Virgil, in an magnanimity, agrees. We note that his armor is made up of gold, while Dryden is made up of rusty iron. When Dryden translated Virgil and the exchange of armor too big for him and the exchange of horses are a way of saying that Dryden was unequal to the task he had set before him. The encounter between Pindar and Cowley is yet another interesting episode in the battle. Cowley is stunned and terrified. He tried to flee, but it is not able to. He finally surrenders. Pindar calls him dog and cuts him into two. And the episode of Bentley and Want. See, in this actually episode, they actually counter one another by actually using some words like a crooked leg, humped shoulders, and he calls that actually more mischief than the goods. And they are using offensive weapons. This is how the counter attack being done with these two people. But they said that the Renaissance scholar to put Bentley in his place in a way it sums up of swift objection to the quarrelsome moderns. So Bentley resolves to perform a great deed and takes his beloved wanton with him. Their progress towards the enemy camp is described as follows. Just listen to these lines. As when two mongrel curs, whom native greediness and domestic want provoke and join in partnership. Thou fearful, nightly to invert the fold of some rich grazier. They, with child depressed and lolling tongues, creep softly. Now he approaches two shining suits of armor hanging upon a oak, and the two heroes of ancient army, Polaris and Aesoph. Wanton aims his lance at Temple, but he could not hit only the belt edge. See what finally has happened actually. The thing found that as when a skillful cook has trusted a brass of wood cooks in the iron speaker piece, the tender side of the wood. So both were to be beloved pair of bread. At the end, both agreed that they cannot live independently without depending one another. So let me summarize actually. So I told you that it is a mock epic written in prose and it happens in the King's Library. And initially the fight was happened in the Paranas mountain between the ancient and the modern people, and they were being supported and the quarrel has started, and the two armies they started uh, they started actually criticizing and praising them with the superior form of writing or with the books. And later they were being compared as spider and the bee, a very good battle. And finally, Aesop and Jupiter they have come and they resolved the problem. And they said that both armies are good when they depend one another. And these are the key terms which help you to understand the names and the technical word which I referred in the text. And these are the terminal questions. Thank you.